Guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love. We've got a breaking news, literally just dropped a couple of seconds ago, and that is that Tottenham Hotspur announces an initial £100 million capital injection. Emphasis, hopefully, on the word initial. We're going to talk about that, talk about the ramifications, talk about how that, well, there's no details yet about how it looks in terms of a shareholder dilution or how exactly that is going to be shaped up. But we're going to be talking about it right now. Please do smash the like button for me, guys. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. We love the engagement that you guys are showing the channel. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Let's go straight to the article, shall we, before we can get into the details. So it literally just broke at 10 a.m., 15 minutes ago. We are pleased to announce that our majority shareholder, the Lewis Family Trust, has, through ENIC Sports and Development Holdings Limited, i.e. ENIC, injected £100 million of new capital into the club. This equity injection will further strengthen the club's financial position and equip the club's leadership team with additional resources to continue the focus on driving long-term sporting success. This additional capital is part of the Lewis family's ongoing commitment to the club and its future. Peter Charrington, non-executive chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, has said, "As I stated a few weeks ago, our focus is on stability and empowering the management team to deliver on the club's ambitions. I know the Lewis family are also ambitious for the future. Today's capital commitment reflects that ambition, and I would like to thank them for their ongoing support. We will continue to do all we can to ensure that Vinay and his team are supported in the best way possible to take the club forward." As far as I can tell, I'll do a little live search in a second. There isn't any, at the moment at least, there isn't any announcement of how that is coming through. Usually, as a majority shareholder that has minority shareholders to consider, there would be a London Stock Exchange announcement that would basically include some sort of information around how that money is coming into the football club, whether it's through a share issue, whether it's through a loan, whether it's through something similar to the financing that we saw through Macquarie. And I don't believe there is anything, I'm just looking for us right now, I don't believe there is anything that is out regarding that. No, there isn't. The last London Stock Exchange announcement was on the 23rd of September, according to the London Stock Exchange website right here, as you can see. 23rd of September is the last one. Oh, no, sorry, that's not true. Conclusion offer period for the 6th of October 2025. That was regarding the two takeovers from Amanda Staveley, the two expressions of interest rather, for Amanda Staveley and from Firehawk Holdings. Let's sort of go back to this article for a second there, guys. We've got Ali Gold talking about it as well. It's important to see that that's an initial £100 million capital injection. Does the word initial suggest that there is going to be more behind it? You would hope so. I've spoken about this for the last few weeks, ever since those expressions of interest came, especially with the guys of the Brooklyn ENIC deal. Now, obviously, for what it's worth, I'll just say this right now, for what it's worth, those were just expressions of interest. There was no necessity that any of those were going to materialise. None of them did eventuate. And we heard also from Dan Gilbert of the Cleveland Cavaliers ownership fame, who also owns Rock Entertainment, when the Telegraph reached out to Rock Entertainment Group to find out whether or not they were part of the consortium, and they essentially alluded to the fact that they were, but they had looked at the property, the opportunity, and decided to walk away. There was no guarantee that anything was going to materialise, but when Martin Lipton of The Sun represented that story as an exclusive about Brooklyn ENIC, saying that there was a Tottenham Blueprint 3.0, I think it was, and that it included £1.2 billion worth of capital injection being put into the club as working capital. I said at the time that the way it was described was unnecessary and unsolicited. Now, I won't go through that whole story again, but I suggested it was more like the correct word or correct adjective would have been unhelpful, because it essentially set the benchmark and the parameters in which other people's money can represent ambition. And I said at the time, look, it's going to be difficult now if the Lewises really want to just come in. And we were hearing about £100 million for a few months as being the obvious amount of money. We know you had the Macquarie loan. I think that was about 95 million, was it, or something like that? That it's just a payday loan baked against future broadcast revenues. But this is £100 million. Well, this has now materialised. I still don't know the details at the time of recording this. Don't know whether that is through a share issue or through any other particular mechanism. But, I don't know how to feel about it. Obviously, and on the one part, yes, it's a contribution. Yes, it helps. I think that takes the total money that ENIC have put into the club in 25 years outside of the initial purchase to about, I think about 230 million, something like that. There was the 100 million that came from the 150 million pound that was potentially injected via a dilutionary share issue about 2 or 3 years ago. Only 100 million of that was taken. And then in December last year, I think there was an initial 12 million and then a 20 million, something after that in January that came in via, again, more share issues. So the assumption would be that this would also come via a share issue. Although, as I say, there hasn't been any information as far as I can see around what that looks like. And I'm not familiar with how else that could come in unless it's through debt. And so we will have to wait and see on the colour of that when it drops in a few hours, hopefully. But to me, my first initial reaction, guys, is look. I think it's good news that we've got £100 million, but I don't think it's enough, and I don't think it's necessarily going to satisfy that many Tottenham fans who see other investors, other owners putting money into their football club through essentially director loans, like the Cronkies. They put in a fortune. We saw Newcastle United put £100 million in just the other day, and £100 million to them relative to their revenue is a far larger slice of an annual revenue sort of distribution or deposit than what ENIC are doing. And I don't know if it's going to move the needle enough to really satisfy and satiate the fans that want to see a general kick on in the light of the alternatives. Most Tottenham fans that have been Levy out, ENIC out, well, in my experience, since Daniel Levy's departed, they've been willing to give the majority owners this kind of rebrand, enough time, enough rope to hang themselves, I guess you could say, and say, well, let's see what that looks like. Let's see what ambition looks like. I'll be very interested to see how you guys feel about this one. Please do drop a comment. Let me know whether you were ENIC in or ENIC out, or not ENIC in, whether you were ENIC, impartial, I guess, or whether you were staunchly ENIC out, whether you were going to give them more time after the Daniel Levy push, and how you feel about this. Because, £100 million is £100 million, right? It's still a lot of money. And if it's entirely going to go towards the football club, then you'd hope that would give us enough money to go and buy a serious player or two serious players in January. And hopefully that word initial suggests that there's more to come. We know that they have a significant amount of money that is needed to find its way into the coffers to be able to facilitate the rest of the hotel build. They have 4 different residential blocks that need to be built over the next however many years. They have the Whitewebs development. We're talking several hundred, £600-700 million that's going to be needed for that entirety of the Northumberland Park phase 3 and phase 4. And of course, we need our working capital for the football club. We've already borrowed 90. We have to pay that back later on. So that's just a net, but we're paying interest on that. But also don't forget that ENIC have taken out of the football club around £90 million over the last 3 or 4 years to be able to pay for the property and infrastructure spend and things that are happening outside of the actual stadium itself in the High Road and around that area. So are they just putting the money back in that they took from the club initially anyway? For me personally, I never had a problem with ENIC and Daniel Levy. Generally speaking, I thought that I've always said this to you, that the reason why Tottenham have struggled to win trophies like every other team apart from the big 5, if you like, and for the most part 3 teams over the last several years, is more around the obscene wealth and the sort of generational wealth gap that exists between certain owners and others, and the inability to enforce a coherent set of rules. That's been my main focus, PSR, FFP, and the inability for the Premier League to sort of, for the left hand to know what the right hand is doing. Within those people that are out there that have always had an issue with our owners specifically and look internally at the football club's operations and decide whether or not we should have won more trophies because of their actions, I'll meet you in the middle and say for sure it hasn't been perfect. And obviously there's been a lot of mistakes. but it's taken this leaving the football club and the rebranding of our ownership to be able to now, for me to see a sort of a different perspective. Whether I don't like the BS, I call a lot of it BS, and I'm not a fan of this pretense. And then everyone seems to be getting sucked into it. That these current owners, the Lewis children, are cut from a different cloth than the people that were in charge before. It doesn't seem to be that way. And £100 million, whilst it's a step in the right direction, it probably won't even get you a Semenyo. Even if you were to be able to convince Bournemouth to sell him, even if you were able to convince him to come ahead of competition from other teams. And of course, there's rumours out again today that Arsenal and Liverpool are very much battling it out and that Tottenham are an afterthought in that conversation. But Tottenham's still got a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of depth to be able to grow to compete with the likes of Arsenal. When you compare our squad depth with the squad depth that Arsenal have, it's night and day. So £100 million for me, like I say, whilst it's a step in the right direction, I'm not sure it is the game changer and the needle mover that it once might have been seen as. £100 million doesn't get you anything like it used to. And so, like I say, for me, knowing that there was comparables to compare us to, whether anything, this is Amanda Staveley, by the way, we don't know, right? Amanda Staveley was, obviously, she's walked away, the PCP Capital lady and her husband, Udogie, I think his name is, they walked away from the ability to offer a complete takeover offer. They walked away the day after their initial expression of interest was unequivocally rejected by the football club. But she has been seen at the stadium for the NFL game a couple of last weekend, just like she was the same time last year. And obviously, after that particular meeting last year, there was a never-ending wave of speculation regarding NDAs and potential £500 million tranches of capital from Saudi money or from Qatar money, Dubai money, whatever. I did a huge breakdown the other day on all of the different potential overlaps between Middle Eastern money and NFL franchise owners and those sorts of things, and private equity capital between like Ares Capital, for example, and Apollo Global Management, another company that has just announced a major sports investment private equity hedge fund. And so the reality is that there's a lot of unknowns here. And the fact that there's no noise or news around how that £100 million has come in. If you remember the £150 million a couple of years ago, guys, that could have been that could have been 150 that ended up being £100 million. Well, before that was actually even introduced into the club, there was an official announcement around the various dilutions that would happen to the 13% of minority shareholders. There hasn't been any announcement about that this morning. And so this £100 million initial capital injection, I think that this must be coming from an outsider that hasn't yet, been finalised. Either that, or we're going to get an announcement very soon regarding the dilution. But usually, it's that would be the tail wagging the dog. Usually, you'd have the information first, and then money gets drawn later through a tranche. There's no announcement of share issues, and there's no announcement of any detail. So maybe that leads you to think that maybe Amanda Staveley or someone like her has in fact injected some capital into ENIC, into maybe even the Tavistock group above them, and therefore they can have a standard deviation away from the norm, a dilution of the necessity to be able to convey all of the specifics until that detail emerges later in its entire format. It's quite exciting if you think about it that way, right? If this is the first bit of a bigger slice, and the rest of that money that will come in will likely go to pay for, as I said earlier, the hotels and the residential blocks and the sports arena and all these different things that are happening outside the stadium in the area. But if it's just £100 million, and if it's just coming from the Lewises, etc., then again, to me, it's nice. I'd rather have it than not. But it certainly doesn't change my opinion that this is I'm almost like a kind of let them have cake, let them eat cake kind of narrative. I don't think it's enough, and I don't believe that the PR spin around the king is dead, long live the king. The emperor wears new clothes. I'm throwing out a lot of analogies here. Forgive me. It's very early in the morning and I haven't had a coffee yet. So I just feel like this is, if it's just it in its simplest and most purest form, £100 million, and that's our demonstration of ambition. Then, as I say, when you have the comparisons, the £1.2 billion that Brooklyn Eric allegedly was going to put into working capital, it's not even 10%, is it? Let's be entirely honest. And that was on the back of a potential takeover bid that was 3.3 billion, which is 25% higher than even the most generous of overvaluations of the Tottenham Hotspur brand in its entirety. We shall see where it goes from here, guys. But like £100 million, how would you use it? How would you spend it? Would you go and try and do a deal with Bournemouth and give them all of it for Semenyo? This is assuming, of course, like I say, that it is all for Tottenham Hotspur and it is all for the football club and for the men's team. It might not be. We don't know. But I don't know. To me, I've got more questions than answers right now. I hope there'll be a clarification later on today around whether it's a share issue or whether it's part of something else. The fact that there's no news, though, to me is news in and of itself. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always,